Afternoon. Let me destroy your lunch. So I'm Rippin, I'm Chief Exec of MCS. Hopefully there's some installers in the audience because I'm going to be talking about new scheme. So if you're under, yes, they're in the wrong place already. Thank you very much for coming. So yeah, I'll not take it personally. So I'm going to talk to you for about 10 or 15 minutes about the new MCS that's coming in January and what it's going to mean to the sector, why we're making these changes to MCS, and there's going to be an opportunity for you to ask me questions. The more the better, please, so there will be a roaming mic after I've finished. So, I mean, it's worth remembering where we are. MCS is 16 years old, and I think we understand from the feedback that installers have given us that MCS has grown in the telling. Its complexity has grown over the years. And actually what the core of MCS needs to be is about quality outcomes for consumers every time. That is our aspiration. And so when we went a year ago nearly now, we asked the market what their aspirations were for MCS for the next 16 years, or maybe the next 5 years at least. And the feedback we got was fantastic, and it was mainly from installers. And so behind the scenes, for the last several months, we've been working hard to get the new MCS 2.0, new MCS ready for launch in January. That's a little later than I hoped it would be, but actually we need to work with our certification bodies who make the assessments against MCS. We don't do that ourselves. That's a certification body who does that. They need to be ready to deploy the new MCS. Yes, don't be afraid. I don't bite too much. So they need to be ready to deploy the new MCS from January. So we're committing to that date. There's a lot of work still to do, but not on the scheme design. The scheme is pretty much built and written. So I think there's a sense I got when I first took on my role is that achieving MCS had become a bit of an end in itself and less about actually what great installers do, and the vast majority of installers are great, delivering quality to their customers. It had become about the process of achieving certification and joining organizations that didn't make a lot of sense to an average installer. And so it's the worst thing in the world for a standards organization to be seen as a barrier to entry. We want to be an enabler for this market growth, which is essential to the future. I'm competing with a rabbit up there, so my life's complete. So what are we talking about in the new MCS? I'm going to talk you through the main elements of the new MCS from an installer's point of view. The first thing to say is, and if you remember nothing about your time with me this afternoon, I want you to remember this: delivered quality. The new MCS is less about your paperwork and your back office systems. You will still need to manage quality, whether you're a sole trader or a multinational installer, and we are seeing a real change in the market, many different installers. But actually what we want to see is delivered quality. Simples. We want to understand that your customers are getting what you promise and that your installs are compliant with the MCS standard. We're not as bothered about how you got there, but that you get there. And so the new MCS is about evidence of delivered quality in the field. And while I mentioned that you're still going to need processes and controls, we will give you clear advice and guidance on what that means to you. So there's no doubt, if you're a sole trader, what does it mean to manage your quality? Quite straightforward, right the way through to a larger installer. So number one, delivered quality. There will be a quiz at the end, no prizes, but hey. Number two. The second part of the equation is risk-based audits. What we will implement from January is a quality risk model that goes across the scheme. So what that will do is determine the frequency of your assessment. So if you're a high-risk installer and we're hearing about you in the wrong way and your assessments are poor, and no installer says that that's the case for them, but there are a minority that don't perform as well as you all do, then they will attract more assessment. They will attract more focus, because what MCS should be about is raising standards. And if we can lift the bottom 5% up, then that's got to be good. So for the first time in MCS's history, and I think the whole sector, your assessments will be in your control. So if you are doing good stuff, there may be years where we don't really need to talk to you at all. So you reward compliance, and those that aren't attract more assessments. Delivered quality, risk-based audits. The third thing we're doing is we're standardizing the assessments themselves. So if the risk-based model is about the frequency when you get assessed, the third change to MCS is what is going to be assessed. And MCS is prescribing what those things are. So to date, assessments have been made by certification bodies, and they decide against the standards, they make your assessment. So we don't like that. We want your assessment to be consistent, irrespective of which certification body you choose. And we're going to tell you what's in those assessments, so that we're not leaving any of this up to chance, because I hear from installers that it depends on which CB I choose, and then which assessor comes to talk to us and see us for the day. That will determine how we're assessed. No more. Sounded powerful, didn't it? So what is being assessed is being prescribed by MCS. And when the new scheme goes live, we will give you a summary, an overview of what you can expect if you're fitting a heat pump, solar PV, biomass, whatever it is. Each assessment will be standardized. Now, so that's all pretty logical, hopefully. We're concerned about delivered quality. We're going to assess you to a quality risk model, and we're going to standardize how you're assessed. Isn't that the way standards organizations should work? And the fourth thing we're going to change is we're going to centralize complaints. All the research tells us, and it's independent research that we've collated over the last 2 years, is that consumers get confused about how and where and who to complain to. And that's not acceptable. And so a consumer's experience, if they are in dispute with their installer, and the first port of call should always be their installer, and we will always want the installer to do the right thing, because everybody has a bad day occasionally. But complaints, we're going to centralize those within MCS. What that means in practice is that we will work with installers. You won't be passed to, those complaints may be passed to your certification body, but only if they're about non-compliance, and they won't be passed to your consumer code. So we will centralize that within MCS, and we've been piloting this over the last year. It's a little known fact, but MCS actually handles more consumer complaints than all of our certification bodies, and there are 8 who offer the installer scheme, and our codes recognize together. So we're putting all that back inside MCS. So linked to that, the other change is that consumer code membership under the new MCS will be voluntary. Now, for some installers, code membership is really valuable, and it is valuable. It offers training, standard contracts, things like that. So it'll be down to you to make a choice about whether you think it's valuable to your business. We're not going to mandate that anymore. So you've got a choice to make in January about whether you renew and continue your relationship with HICE and REC if you're already MCS certified. And this is about simplifying the scheme and making it more accessible. Our complaint management will be backed by ADR in the same way consumer codes make reference to ADR, alternative dispute resolution. But we'll always, and our promise is, we will work with installers first. So if we get a complaint, the first people to hear about it will always be the installer. And that isn't happening today, and it needs to happen going forward. Number 5. There's only 28 of these, don't worry. No, and there's 5 or 6. Anyway, this is sort of the last one. So one of the things that happens today is that there is a license agreement to trade as MCS certified. If you're already MCS, and I should have done a show of hands. Can I have a show of hands who is actually MCS certified? Is people at the back prepared to admit this? 1, 2, yeah, okay, so there are MCS certified contractors. So you will know that as you get assessed by your CB, your certification body, they give you a license agreement to use the MCS mark, the MCS certified mark, which is a protected mark. And then for the year, you are given permission to apply that, raise certificates for your installations. You self-certify them. We are removing that and replacing it with a direct contract, a relationship that we want to have with all of you. So we want to draw you closer to MCS, and installers have told us this, that, as I said earlier, they get confused about who is it they're working with. You'll be working with the MCS team going forward, and you'll have a contract. And that contract will be reciprocal, two-way, underlining a partnership we want with you. We're going to commit to help you. But equally, if you're not doing the right thing and you're not prepared to do the right thing, then we will hold you to account. And if I hear this a lot from installers, they say, you need to do more, Ian. MCS needs to do more to get the cowboys out of the sector. So we will do more. But equally, we're going to meet you where you are in your world. And under a new MCS, and the MCS that you've experienced, hopefully, those of you who have over the last few years, you will know that we want to engage with you. You will know that we want to talk to you, which is why we went to consultation on the new scheme. So how are we going to make all that work? So MCS behind the scenes is busy resourcing up, putting in new systems, not more cost. This should cost you less than it does today if you choose not to be a member of a consumer code. We're also, later on, we'll be announcing what we're going to do about financial protections in the sector, because we have grave concerns about the value of insurance-backed guarantees. So we will address that. Yes, I can see some of you smiling. I mean, we have to say that we're not sure that they really add value to the consumer experience. So we think all up, a changed MCS is about consumer protection. So if we can work closer with you, you understand what's required. Complexity is the enemy of quality. So we're a simplified MCS that's focused on delivered quality. It's rah-rah. Delivered quality, quality assessments prescribed by MCS, and the frequency determined by a quality risk model that you will understand for your business. That's what's coming. Thank you very much for listening. I'm really happy to take questions. In fact, I want you to ask me the hardest possible question you can think of, because the answer is always 42. So we've got a roaming mic. Hands up, please. If you wouldn't mind just saying, who are you, where you're from? Who are you, where you're from, and are you MCS?
Yes, Ben Hodges about MCS. Actually, our core business is evolving MCS umbrella services. So we work with major manufacturers to kind of,
again, I recognise your T-shirt now. Yeah.
Yeah, about delivering quality, because having been MCS since 2010, we needed that standard. But also, I want to just link it to an earlier question. Actually, Graham Hendra made about this: why are heat pumps £15,000 installed and not X. And I think just on a practical level, I was interested in your view. Great that we're focusing on quality delivered, not what forms you've got. I think that's a great step forward, so brilliant.
Yeah.
But around things like frost protection, flexi hoses, practicalities that are mandated in those standards, and probably 10 years ago was a good idea, but we install heat pumps in the southwest of England and spend £600 filling a circuit with glycol to protect a -15. So it's daft, and it adds cost to the consumer because we have to drive the cost down to the consumer. So how are you looking at that as well to strip out project costs that the installers are having to add to the consumer? Because I think this part, great step, but what about the other stuff? Well,
first, I'm never...
Sorry, that was a really long question.
Hopefully you heard that. But so two parts of that. I think great to get your feedback on delivered quality. I mean, it is a passion of ours, and we need to move the industry in that direction. And that has been really tough, actually, to convince lots of people, stakeholders, that that's the right thing to do. But I'm pleased to say all of our certification bodies are really keen to do that too. They want to move in this direction. Now, second point about what is appropriate to an installation based on geography. The technical working group, of which MCS people are not part, we just facilitate it. The heat pump working group is constantly looking at the evolution of the standards. So it sounds like I'm ducking it, but actually it's important that I don't prescribe what's in the standard, that the technical working group do. So I know that it's the busiest technical working group we've got. It's got 40 plus members, this heat pumps, and they're looking at hybrids, high temperature heating, heat pumps, all the things that I know Graham talks about. How do we get those in the standards and the flexibility as this market matures? I think I'm absolutely behind you, and I would encourage the technical working groups to do that. And if you're not a member of that group and you want to submit evidence or have your voice heard, then we are planning a standards day soon. But we can talk after about how to get those ideas into the standard. I mean, I'm an advocate of standards, but they need to be living documents. And I think we probably through COVID, development of the standards slowed. I'll be honest about that. We now need to move forward again and start to make them adaptive, work with real life technology. In the same way training should. That's not keeping pace either in our sector, is it? So I take the point. I can't answer it because it's not really within my remit. It's a technical working group of MCS. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Cheers.
Thank you. Now don't be shy. Come on. Have I overwhelmed you? Oh, good.
Hi, I'm
Hi.
Ed Sharpley from Spy Renewables, sales manager. We're MCS company, umbrella scheme, essentially, design, supply, commission,
Yep.
work with the trades. And could you elaborate a little bit more on the risk assessment? So obviously, when installers get highlighted as like a high risk company under MCS, they're not going to take that very kindly. So what detail is there on that?
Yeah, I mean, the first thing to say about that is that as an installer, you should always know how you're viewed by the scheme. It should be really transparent. So from day one, the day one version of the quality risk model will be about non-compliance data that we get from your assessments. So if your assessments are cosmetic in nature and not fundamental challenges, your risk level will be low. And if you're on the scheme now, you'll be initially assigned your risk rating, if you like, based on your performance to date. If you join the scheme in January as a new installer, you will need to operate for 2 years before your risk level drops, because we just need to gather the data. So that's the way it'll work really clearly on day one. We are, however, and we've run a pilot to look at things like machine learning and what constitutes compliance risk. So what are the moments of truth or the reverse of that for an installer that loses control of their quality? So we know as installers grow rapidly, so one-man band becomes major geography, lots of subcontracting, and then loses control of their quality. You know, can we predict that? So before we get to your assessment. So on day one, it'll be about the assessments you've had from your certification body and the severity and volume of the non-conformities you've had. Because that's clear data that we can all work with. That's what it is.
So you'll get a risk rating on day one,
yes,
and you can work on that with MCS to improve
yes,
it?
Yes, so the idea is that we want you to work on that because we want to raise standards. So a good example of this is, right now, I'm not going to do this, but I could tell you the top 10 issues we see with installations of heat pumps or solar PV. In a year's time, I'd love to be able to publish a report that says, a year ago, these were the 5 top issues, and as a sector, we focused on them, and now they're not the 5 issues, so we raise standards. So if MCS is anything, it should be about raising standards. So MCS needs to learn, as a scheme, it needs to learn from what's actually happening in the sector and your performance. Equally, we want to do more to celebrate best practice and good work. So, you know, I've gone on record to say well-run umbrella schemes are a fantastic way for new installers to get into the market. Emphasis on the well-run. And there are some well-run, and we've issued guidance on that, actually, what is a well-run umbrella scheme. So, you know, this is what I mean about the standards needs to stay current, the trends in the market. The scheme also needs to stay current. So another thing that's just reminded me, thank you for your question, that we will be talking to many more consumers. We'll want to know what their experience is of your installations. So that'll give us, and it has done, we've been piloting this with the boiler upgrade scheme where we've made, I think 25,000, certainly over 20,000 calls to consumers to understand what their heat pump experience has been. And it's allowed us to identify early who are the poor operators. I'm really pleased to say, though, that over 95% of the people who speak to us say they're really happy with their heat pump. Thank you very much. So we move on. But it's the ones that have got not just a bad Friday, but a bad week, a bad month, and then we know who you are, and you will attract more attention. So, and that makes it fairer and stronger. That's all this is about. It needs to be fair, stronger when it needs to be. Hi.
Dean Shaw from Safe World Insurance Group, Tech
Yes.
Manager. So just the last bit where you just said there's not sure insurance-backed guarantees are good for consumers. So just understand what will be good for the consumers going forward.
Yeah, so as you may know, as you do know, MCS has been selling a IBG product through the mid. And that's allowed us to understand that market and understand claims ratios and what consumers think they're getting versus what they are actually getting. So when you hear as a consumer that you're getting a guarantee, that might trigger something in your head that isn't actually what an insurance-backed guarantee warranty is today. So we want to raise the bar on that. So every insurer in this sector has lobbied me to say, no, our product's great. Well, I'm sorry, I don't believe it. So we are going to raise the bar and say it needs to cover things like design, and it can't just be limited to a cease-to-trade policy that is hard then to access for consumers. Now, I can go off on one about this if you want, but I just feel that we deserve something better. Consumers need guarantees. They need your reputation to say, if there's a problem, I'm going to sort it out. That's the primary objective of anything, really, when it comes to a complaint. I'm less worried about insurance companies, frankly. So MCS, we are good at writing standards. We will publish a standard for financial protection in this marketplace. And then SafeWorld and any other provider can choose to reach that bar or not. So, sorry, that sounded a little bit like, let's have a scrap. But actually, how do we how do we raise the bar on this stuff that I don't think is really what the market now needs? MCS's mission is to give confidence in homegrown energy. And confidence comes from using a certified contractor, a piece of equipment that is right for their home, that's safe and performs, and they want to know what happens if something were to go wrong. And if it were to go wrong, they're going to come to MCS and you, in partnership, the installer and MCS, not all the other stuff that happens today. So there you go, that's fighting talk, that's the way to finish, I guess, but maybe one last question before I grab a sandwich. Yes, hang on a moment, it's coming to you. To tell us who you are and where you come from.
I'm Amy Ellis from GME Commercial Gas Services. For any companies that are looking to join MCS and start this process, with the new changes coming in January, is it more worth us just waiting until January for this to happen, or is it worth us starting the process now still?
Start. Market's moving quite fast. Solar PV still, best year ever for solar PV last year in the history of MCS. So forget feed-in tariff. Heat pumps, boiler upgrade scheme. There's only MCS that allows you to access the boiler upgrade scheme for your customers. So there's the sales pitch done. But I would prepare yourself for, get ready, even if you're thinking about it, start to think about how do I comply with the published standards. They're all on our website, transparent. Choose the one that the technology you're installing. You'll have to adhere to the rules as they are today, so you'll have to be a member of a consumer code. All of those things still apply. So I would do that. What we're likely to do when the new scheme goes live is that anybody who comes along in January won't be able to join the old MCS, today's MCS. I mean, there's a lot MCS does right, but your feedback, installers have said, this really isn't as accessible. We don't feel it's working with us, and it's not recognising great work that we do. So it's about time MCS did that. So if you're thinking about becoming MCS certified, choose your certification body, come and see MCS team, we're just over there, and start your journey.
Thank you.
All right, I'm done. Thank you very much. Well, MCS team is around all the time, so if you want to talk to us about your individual position, situation, please do so. Have a great rest of the day.